Maria Chaleos and Taun with you from the KSL Greenhouse. Today we have traveled down to Spanish Fork. We are with Andrea Samani, and we're going to talk about waterwise gardening and just the beautiful things that you can do to really create a wonderful yard. Taun, I'm going to let you introduce us to Andrea.
So Andrea Samani is a dear friend. She worked with me for several years, and she's had an interest in waterwise gardening and conservation. And she's taken a yard that was full of turf and maybe a couple of trees and just turned it into something I consider just beautiful.
Tell me what you were thinking about and why you've decided to put certain plants where you've decided to put them. Look at the bees.
Yes, that's one reason. I selected this plant because of the colors, the silvery leaves, the blue flowers, and the attraction of the bees. This thing by afternoon will be covered in bees, like covered.
So this is a common landscape plant. It's called blue spirea, and you can get it at any garden center. You cut it down in the fall like a perennial, and it blooms from July until frost.
And then this is a fruitless mulberry. It's about 5 years old.
This one is, again, on that theme of water-wise. It grows relatively quickly, but it usually doesn't create any problems, especially here with roots and things. And so for something to give you a little bit faster shade that's not a cottonwood, this is a great option.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The leaves are big. The Tyrannosaurus dinosaur footprint leaves, that's what my kids call these. I had this raised bed it did have chamomile in it and this echinacea, except for it got hot. That chamomile does not like to be hot, so it's out. But this was like the tea garden. And then the sunflowers, I have quite a draw of birds. They're not here right now because we're out here, but they're usually climbing all over these things.
So one of your goals, it sounds like, with this garden was not only to create something water-wise, but you're trying to attract wildlife back in.
Oh yeah. I have, when we get to the backyard, you'll see I had an oriole bird, a yellow oriole bird, pop up yesterday that I'd never seen in my array of birds that come. I also get these blue mountain birds, but they only come in the spring. It's really weird how they migrate in and out, but.
And so you have your screen over here with the tree, and it opens up a little bit, but right in the middle of this you have a patio area. And so what is the goal of having the patio here? Because you have 2 or 3 others in the yard.
So many options to get to sit down somewhere and just enjoy the wildlife that I've drawn to here, actually.
Yeah, and so over through here you have, I guess we would call more of a cottage theme. And I see blanket flower in there.
That just popped up.
And the blanket flower just came up.
Just popped up, yep.
And so trees here, but I notice in here a complete lack of turf grass.
Yeah, I have absolutely no turf on this. This is a fruit tree. This is a placatum. A
placatum.
It's got apricot, plum. A friend grafted it for me and gave it to me. And that's about 5 years old. I planted these two, the mulberry tree and this placatum tree, but I planted them at the same time. This year I had 5 fruits.
Did frost get them?
I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I spray it, and I'm as you can see, my raised beds.
One thing I found interesting that hardly anyone grows, or you have celery over here.
Yes.
So these, to me, I thought they were some sort of strange perennial, but when you look in here and they haven't matured yet, you can see the celery stalks. Utah actually used to be a major celery producing state, and just to see these in the yard as an ornamental is kind of fun.
Yes, but peppers and tomatoes always
It's a
grow.
beautiful plant, though.
Yeah, it's really pretty too. It'll be interesting if I get to eat any of it ever.
It sounds like it's all an experiment.
Yes, it is. With anyone who works in their yard, you plant things and they'll say, yeah, that'll grow, it'll be great. But not always. It's not true. So there have been some things that I'm like, what? This was supposed to be this was going to grow here. And I've had to replace things. And then I've got things that People are like, how is that growing? That's crazy. So
Nature.
nature, yeah.
Working your way back this way, you have some pretty big butterfly bush.
Yes, these two here are 20 years old.
And you haven't, a lot of times people will cut these to the ground and you
Yes.
have not.
I never have.
But it creates a really nice
Yes.
effect.
It creates a nice privacy from, say, like a bathroom window or a bedroom window. And the birds, if I open my windows in the spring or the fall, the birds are always, my cat likes to sit there and watch the birds jump around in the shrubs. So this is just a couple years old. 3 years.
The only way you can tell the difference is by the size of the limbs inside the bush.
Right. Yep.
So again, continuing on a theme of something that attracts pollinators, blooms for a long period of time, and is relatively easy maintenance.
Yes, definitely. And which brings us over to the milkweed that I left it. I normally cut it down, but the monarch butterflies, that's how they live. That's how they, that's a part of their cycle of life. So, and they'll grow there and then they come and jump all over these bushes. So that's pretty, they get pretty ratty looking, but the flowers are really pretty. I kind of think that people quit planting those, like pulling them out like they were weeds.
Yeah, people are leaving them a lot more because
Yeah.
it is imperative. The monarch butterflies were recently listed as endangered.
This
Yeah.
down here on the ground is bee balm, and it gets this beautiful fuchsia flower on it, and it's beautiful, and the bees are all over it. They love it. And my beautiful,
It smells like mint.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
mint family plant. I just pinched some of the leaves and had Maria smell them, and they smell really minty. Maybe just a hint of basil in them to me. But they
Not
are
like spearmint, but with a little bit of basil.
yeah. And so these you've cut back just recently, but they'll spring right
Yes.
back and they'll bloom the entire summer.
Yeah.
They bloom from June to frost.
yeah, I just deadheaded them because they were all, there were no bright, vibrant flowers on there anymore. They had done their thing for the year. And then some more of the blue mist, spirea.
This is really beautiful.
It's winter creeper euonymus, which there are a lot of cultivars, the emerald gaiety, emerald and gold are a couple of them, but it will climb if you let it and twine around trees and things, but you can also turn it into a ground cover. And the name purple winter creeper comes because these will turn plum purple in the fall.
Yeah, they're so pretty. It's really pretty.
So it'll give you some winter interest when it's really nothing blooming out here. You still have something that will attract interest into the yard and at least remind you of warmer times.
Right. I have the Stella Day lilies here. They're great. They don't spread.
Now
Love
these
'em.
are Stelladoros. They go a little bit dormant in late summer. It's perfectly normal, but I like the Stelladoro because they don't spread
Yes.
everywhere. And they have a longer bloom time also.
I had some that spread all over. Like, I swear there was like one there in my front yard. There was like a little clump, and now they're everywhere. They're everywhere, like here and then like 100 feet away. I'm like, how did that happen? So, and then this gets crazy bees.
Veronica right here, there's many types of Veronica. It's sometimes called speedwell. There's ground cover forms.
I have some in the back.
Yeah,
that
the
you'll
most
see.
commonly grown upright perennial form of Veronica is a purple, but these are pink. These will attract lots of pollinators in, and they bloom midsummer again when a lot of other things are done. And you have the hibiscus in the background that are finished, but you still have the ornamental red leaves on there. But this is another one that can be very important to maintaining diversity in your yard. And so we are seeing all these blooming plants, and they are pretty, but the goal here is, for you, I believe, is to go pesticide free.
Yes.
And so if you have a diversity of flowers like this, and even though there's lots of flowers, it's not that much maintenance. It's
No.
less time than mowing your lawn.
Like I think I spend in the springtime, I'll come out here, I'll spend a day, probably 8 hours, picking the weeds up, cleaning up all the fall debris, whatever, maybe pruning things back, and then I'm done until midsummer. I'll come, do a quick weeding, and then wait for fall and come back.
So the reason to have all of these is that it creates habitat for beneficial insects, not only pollinators, but insect predators that will knock out a lot of the aphids, spider mites, and other insects that normally feed on our plants. And so when you have plantings like this, it's rare that you actually need any form of pesticide.
Right. In fact, I did have to get my black widow sprayed. My window wells are pretty bad this year. I normally don't. Once in a while in the vegetable garden, I'll put some 7 down. All good. Keeps the bugs away. But if you don't plant vegetables, then you don't have to worry about squash bugs. This is milkweed here, so.
That seed pod's very interesting though.
Yes.
Looks like a fruit.
And the flowers on here are really pretty. But they're definitely
Well, there are
early
several perennial forms of milkweed that we grow in our gardens. It's just this is the native wild one. And so the flowers are really pretty.
They are so pretty. So this is lily turf down here. And I was trying to grow it to see what it would do for a ground cover. This is 5 years old, so it's not doing so hot.
Yeah, so lily turf, it's also known as liriope in other areas of the United States, and it is one that if you go to the south is just ubiquitous everywhere. They use it as a low hedge plant along walkways, and it just has this grass-like look. There's red forms of it, but here it will grow, but we don't get that full bushy look that you want out of it that you would say in Tennessee or Georgia or North Florida. But it's an experiment. And
It's an
fun to
experiment,
have
yeah.
because you probably have some of the only liriope or the lily turf in Spanish Fork.
Yeah.
So before we go in the backyard, you have some hardscape features, and they're scattered throughout your yard, and a lot of them have just a little bit of water in them with some sort of fountain. And what's the purpose of this besides ornament?
To water the birds and to give the bees, the pollinators, something to drink. And it's a little off center just to keep it so they can climb out if they fall in. Yeah. When we come to the backyard, this lilac is 5 years old. It was just a little 2-foot lilac 5 years ago.
Tell us about this entry.
I wanted it to be, there's a center point in my garden, and that's to the patio, and you can just see it just around, if you follow the trail. If you follow these lines, it will go straight to the center of the focal point from anywhere in the garden. So if you stand at the back door or the other gate on the other side of the yard, it all comes to the center point. It's important, I think, mostly because the different views that you get, but I still want you to go to the center, to go and sit. That's where the family gathers. Even when it's 100 degrees, we'll go sit out. We'll sit out here, only because once we get back here, you'll see how shady it is. The plants kind of protect you. It's still hot, but it's only 90 degrees instead of 110. So, anywho, let's see. I have my rose garden here. This is really pretty in the spring. As the year goes on, if you come here like any week, it's different. This rose garden puts on quite a show. I have water around to my roses, but I don't water them. And I haven't had a problem. I get a little bit of rust on my roses, but the rain this year especially has helped. But like I said, I don't really do much with them except for prune them back after they bloom. But this was full in the blooms. I have all sorts of roses. They're all different. This rose here on this corner here, it's like just a shrub rose, but when it blooms in the spring, it smells like heaven back here. And the honeysuckle, it blooms with it. So it's, like I said, you can come back here any week and it's a little different. That is a lilac. Little Kim, I think is what it is. It's full grown and it's only, how tall is that, Taun? 5
Kim
feet?
gets about 5 feet.
Yeah.
And it'll get 5 or 6. And you've got it tucked back here, so you've got some honey locust hanging over the fence next to the lilac, and it's back there just on its own. But when it blooms in the spring, you were talking about the importance of fragrance in the garden. These lilacs can be so important because if you like that in that late April to May period,
these
they're
actually
among the best.
the flowers on this year went into the first week of June. Like I was cutting them off. They're much smaller than the traditional lilacs, but it was really pretty and they smelled really good. And I cut them off. Take them in my house.
Talk to me about the garden art and how you've incorporated garden art into your landscape.
The art in the yard. I put those in. These, I have moved these. This is a second house for these, a second place. I picked them because I know that one day I'm going to put a vine on these and let them grow up. I had, ever since once you put a fence up, it changes everything in your yard. So my lilac, that little one we were just talking about, the little Kim, it wasn't growing like it should, I thought. So I thought, well, I'll put these here. It's all functional. It's functional art, I guess you would call it, because now I can put a vine here. I have a drip line behind here that water my lilacs and my redbud and my vinca, and I can just tap into the thing.
Clematis would be a great one to put on there because it's partially shade tolerant. You've got the bark on the ground that would shade the roots and keep the ground cool, and you could plant different, say you have a lot of spring flowers in here, you could put a summer blooming clematis on there that would be beautiful. But even there, you have your sundial next to it. And when I said that maybe that art adds a little bit of whimsy, but do you have a personal connection to what you put out here?
Usually, like I was telling Maria, a lot of the things I have in my yard are from places I've traveled. This sundial is from my mom's, but I've had it for 30 years. When I look at it, I think of my mom and the beautiful flowers that she plants in her yard. So. I have a bird bath over there that I got for my birthday from my family. They gave that to me, and so it's not just watering the birds, but it's something that has a little sentimental value. So the trellises, not so much. That was like a trip to the hardware store.
Right.
So one of the important aspects that we're seeing through the garden is diversity of plants. So this is redbud, then it blooms in early spring with those
beautiful,
fuchsia pink flowers.
so beautiful.
Brilliant. But the texture it adds later is what's important, because even though we don't have a lot of flowers through here, the leaf structure is totally different. You can see that you've had some leaf cutter bees on it. We've seen a few root weevil and things through here and there, but just even some of the leaves that are kind of desiccating for late summer just because of the heat, it adds a natural look to the yard. And a lot of times I think we focus too much on flowers to where texture is just so important.
Absolutely. Everything in here too, like those heart-shaped leaves, from this redbud to the ferny honey locusts that are on my park strip that come over. I have a hard time pruning them off because it's like if I cut it, there goes some more shade.
It is, and I don't know if it was intentional, but redbuds are naturally an understory tree that it's not that they're super shade tolerant, but they tolerate more shade than many other trees.
Like I was saying about the fence, ever since I put that fence up, everything shot up, and it seems like this redbud shot under. My Japanese pagoda tree, Sephora Japicana, is that what that is?
Sephora japonica, yes.
Yeah. And I love it. Is it a scholarly tree? What do they call it?
Scholar tree,
Yeah.
Japanese pagoda tree.
Yeah.
This is one that is quite rare, actually. You will see them around in botanical gardens and sometimes city parks. And when I see them planted, you know you have a horticulturist that has probably selected them, or they were dumped in October by a nursery for cheap and someone planted them. Those are the two reasons you see them. But this one gets beautiful white flowers in July, in which there's a few remaining up there. But it has just a little bit more filtered shade to it, and so lawn does a little better underneath it. The texture is a little bit similar to honey locust, but it's just a rare tree that does quite well here in Utah.
Yeah. In fact, I did see it at the Water Conservation Garden up in West Valley, West Jordan.
Conservation Garden Park.
Yes. And I fell in love with them, and they had them in their little patio area when you first walked out.
For some reason,
and I was like, I have to have
you
that
see a
in
lot
my
of
yard.
these in cemeteries in the Salt Lake City area, and they may have had a city arborist who liked them. But I don't know why in Utah, but they've been a little bit associated with cemeteries.
I put my Buddha and my pagoda lantern underneath it, thinking of the whole idea behind the tree being a scholarly tree, like something you would sit under and read a book, and relax. I planted this yarrow. This was before anything else happened. It has been here forever. Those package of wild seeds, that you buy at the hardware store. You just throw it out, whatever.
And the yarrow is the only thing that lives.
And that made it. This has made it. This is like, we're going on like 20 years.
Yeah.
I would normally cut it, but I hadn't. I had cut some of it, but this one kept blooming, and then there's another one on the side yard. So I just left it. It smells really good. Like if I were to cut it now, it smells delicious. It's pretty happy. I don't even have any water on this dripping in, so
it's just surviving on
Yeah.
normal, natural precipitation.
yep, that's just from the rain and whatever else happens to sneak over there. This honeysuckle, so I planted this 5 years ago when I redid everything, and it's really pretty and it smells really good, but it doesn't grow very fast. But this year, it seemed like it got a little boost, and I don't know if it's because, even though we're in a drought, it seems like we got a little more rain. Like, it's kind of confusing, but
So you're not watering it that often either.
I water my yard, my entire yard, about an hour and a half all week. Maybe, when it's hot, I'll add it 45 minutes. I'll just hit the button, turn it on Sunday night, and then again on Thursday night. So I don't water like my grass. I don't normally have to turn it on, but it has been kind of hot. So when things get a little droopy, I'll just push it on. But for the most part, I don't have to water very much, considering. Like you would think that I'd have to water this all the time, but I do not.
Your yard is a great example of creating rooms that extend from your home. Explain why you've done that.
Just so when people come over, or if I want to come outside, and I want to like enjoy the roses in the spring or the honeysuckle in the early summer, I'll sit here. Then I can have options. It's kind of like, do I want to sit in the TV room or do I want to go sit in the reading room? So that's mostly why. And to extend out of my house. We could come out here in the winter and fall. If I liked being cold, I would, but I do not, so. So these are pea shrubs, and I have 3 of them. And they don't get any taller than this, right? About 15 feet. And I just pruned it. And I have to prune it back in the spring, so people don't lose their eyes when they walk by. But
So pea shrubs are a fairly rare landscape plant. Again, you can get them but people hear pea shrub or Cyperian pea shrub, and they like, oh, I've never heard of that. I'm not going to plant it. And this is a species that gets a little taller. And when I saw this from far back, it's like, oh, you planted a mountain mahogany. Just kind of, you get a D. Not an F, but a D. But then you look at it, and it's a legume, and you can see the seed pods in here.
Yes.
But the form looks like, not mountain mahogany, but mountain ash. But this will be around, and it gets beautiful yellow flowers in the spring.
This thing is covered with bees. Like the big, not just the little bees, but those big giant bumblebees come. And they're not just one or two, it's like covered. It's insane. It's one of the joys of having a plant like this one in your garden.
So this
That's for
is
sure.
one that is cold hardy down to 30 or 40 below zero. We don't get that cold, but it also is very heat tolerant. And it only needs to be watered deeply a couple times a month at most. It may even survive on being deep watered to a depth of 18 or 24 inches about once a month. So another very underused plant, and a creative use of it by limbing it up into a small tree instead of just letting it be a gangly bush.
Yeah, because it would be a gangly bush for sure. Because it's pokey, and it's not nice to play in. Right?
No.
Have you ever like poked your
No.
finger on one of the little thorns?
So if you have teenagers that like to sneak out
that's right.
at night, this is one you'd put near their window.
That's
So,
right. These are irises, the
Variegated
variegated
Siberian
yes.
iris.
And they get the purple flower on them, and they smell like grape Kool-Aid, and they're delicious.
So this is one that adds texture to your yard again when they're not blooming, and they seem to not spread as fast, and so you can plant them. And this is how long has this been?
I planted there were three little 4-inch container bulbs in there, and now they're this big. 5 years. 5 years old.
So you can divide them in late August to mid-September, just like you would regular iris, but they're really low maintenance. And we talked earlier about there's not a need to have flowers everywhere all the time, and so this blooms in the spring, but it's just a gorgeous landscape plant when it's not in bloom. And unlike other iris, it doesn't get out of hand.
Right. So it's a yarrow like this. It's all cut off, but it gets colorful pink and yellow and white flowers on here, and I can't see it. I have more over there, but the shade's starting to take that out. But this is a really good drought tolerant plant. Like, I don't
And
think
again, what is it?
I'm not
Sorry?
even watering it. It's called Colorado yarrow.
So this is obscured by the shrubs a little bit, but the catio back there is an outdoor cat patio. And what's the idea behind it?
The idea behind that is so she doesn't go run out on the road and get run over. And she can come outside and enjoy outside still. And with the little ecosystem I've created with the bird food and whatnot, I do have mice. Between her and my 2 dogs, they keep a good count on the population, keep it down, you know. So
We've also got in here a sumac.
I have 2 types.
2 types. So do you want to point out the types?
I don't remember what they were all supposed to be this type, but I got one of these. So
Okay.
it's like big.
This is a dwarf sumac.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, and this one is growing bigger.
Yes.
But when people overwater sumacs, they will get everywhere.
Yes. So they pop up, but it's easy. I just cut them off at the root, boop, and they don't come back.
And you don't have them near any lawn, is the other trick.
Oh yeah, no.
But again, very water-wise. These will
So
turn
water-wise.
scarlet red in the fall.
It's beautiful,
And
yes.
very beautiful. Native Americans used to use the seeds on these to make a lemonade type drink. And
We should make one. Try it.
yeah, and so it actually can be used for a few different things. These are, I think, native to the East Coast. We have some close related species here in Utah that look almost exactly the same.
Right. The idea behind this was I was trying to create a canopy to walk under.
Well, one of the importance of what you've done back here is you've created a little bit of a sense of mystery, for lack of a better term. And instead of just having a wide open yard with a few different patios, you've created something that, as you walk, it adds to those garden rooms, like the extension of your home. But even if a little kid came out here, there's mystery and places that they can hide, and just different things. But even as adults, this sort of landscape can be so important because it can create a sense of peace, create a sense of privacy. But still, as you go around the corner, there's always a surprise,
something new. These are skyrocket elderberry.
So a columnar elderberry.
Yes, columnar elderberry. And I have I'm not sure, maybe 6 or 7. But as we come around here, you'll see the screen that I created. So I can't see my neighbor's kitchen window. So these are plumbago, and they have the beautiful purple flowers where the seeds are. The seed pods are still on there right now. But these had these big, well, not big, but beautiful purple flowers.
They look like, and you can get them in yellows and reds and purples, but they look like a not columbine, lupin.
Yeah.
So if you've ever seen the pictures of just the grand, tall, brilliantly covered lupins, these have the same flowers. But they are a bush form, and this one's getting shaded out a little bit, but there's some more over here that are getting a little more light, that are still quite ornamental. And so you cut these down to the ground, like you would a normal perennial, but they give you the most gorgeous late spring lupin type flowers. And again, very important for pollinators. And if you're sitting out here in the spring, you've got this backdrop.
And those giant bumblebees jump from those yellow flowers to these purple flowers, back and forth. This is my neighbor's tree. I love it.
So it's
amazing.
The neighbor called me about this tree, and I was like, so it flowered beautifully, but now it has seed heads. And this is Royal Paulownia, Royal Empress tree. Another very rare tree in Utah, and it's one of the most gorgeous trees in bloom, but it does get seed pods on it that are quite extensive. But it's just a gorgeous tree. They're a lot more common in Europe than here. And so it's growing into the yard. And is it the most formal? No, but it adds to the look. And this tree's only about 10 or 12 years old, and it's already reached 35 or 40 feet.
I've been tying my shade cell on there for about 5 years. The magic number. More honeysuckle.
Kind of describe for us what you were thinking when you put this in.
So I was thinking not just the draw of, from the center of the yard here in the middle of the patio, but you got to have a reason to come here as well. Now that I got you to this, now that I got you to the center here, what's going to keep you here? And this will lull you to sleep in about 30 minutes if you sit out here by yourself. And it's this nice and cool. So that, and of course the birds. This thing usually is covered, like all the shrubs have birds all over in them, and they're taking turns. Jumping in, getting a drink, taking a bath. And it was really easy to install. I did it all. Dug out like a 4x4. It's a pondless fountain. It's got a nice big hose that goes up to the top and just pumps all the way around.
So these are also, from a practical end, are safer for small kids.
Oh yeah.
Without having a pond here, there's less chance of them accidentally falling in or getting into trouble. And then these rocks, and the way it's designed, it acts as a natural filter. And with the shade you have around here, it's a fairly low maintenance option for a patio area. And I think you can install one of these for anywhere from $700 to a couple thousand, depending on the size. There's a few different companies that make them, but it looks natural with the shade and the plants growing over it. and it just really does add to the ambiance, but also you're getting evaporative cooling off of it in the summer. If you get a little bit of a breeze blowing towards you where you're sitting, you'll probably be another 5 to 10 degrees cooler here than what you would even in normal shade.
Yes. Yes. Even if it's in your noggin, but you're in that water. It's kind of like when you're in Arizona anywhere. They've always got, you can always hear water running. If you're at a well-designed place anyway, just so you don't feel like you're 120 degrees, you know. That serviceberry above the fountain has been here for 20 years. And it's beautiful in the spring too.
So white blossoms in the spring.
Beautiful white blossoms.
Attracts
the
birds.
robins. The robins are like constantly fighting all the other little birds off to eat all the berries off of that thing.
So serviceberry is sometimes called poor man's blueberry. We don't often eat them, but they're very edible. You can make pies and jellies and syrups, but very important for birds. The fall color on that serviceberry also
Beautiful.
beautiful, brilliant orange and red and yellow all at
Amazing.
once on the same bush.
It's amazing.
The red shrub is 9-bark.
9-bark.
Is this Diablo right
Yes.
here? Diablo 9-bark.
Yes, it was supposed to be Little Diablo. Another tag printing problem apparently.
So when you see on a shrub,
Supposed to be late.
every once in a while you get mistakes with tagging, but 9-barks are native to our mountains and just usually easy to grow shrubs, and they give you some good red color. This bur oak is a slower growing tree. It will take 5 to 10 years to really establish, but once it does, it'll grow about 18 inches. And you've planned a transition in here is these honey locusts. They oftentimes, because they're planted on the street, don't last as long, but this bur oak in 10 or 15 years will provide the same shade as what the honey locust did. So it's a
Right.
transition tree. Now,
Right.
one other I want to point out is this perennial that you do cut this back, and this is called
do.
Powis Castle Artemisia, or Powis Castle sage, and it's one that you can deadhead or you can pinch. And if you let it grow like this, it looks beautiful taller, but you can keep it down and keep it a little bit more bushy and full and almost use it as a hedge. And so this is another underused perennial. It's one of the Royal Horticultural Society's best landscape plants. But Powis Castle Artemisia does really well here, but you rarely see it planted.
It does really well here.
How would you describe what you've tried to create?
I would describe it as a gathering place. Anywhere. We could gather anywhere in my yard.
What does it mean to you personally?
To be surrounded by plants, that's the best thing about it. That was the whole idea, just to come here and just for me, a place for me to like go and just truly feel nature, like kind of feel embraced by it, you know, no matter where you look.
Yep. The pollinators,
Yes.
the birds,
Yes.
like you have feeders everywhere,
Yeah.
are all important as part of that,
Yes.
getting back to nature.
Yes. Somewhere to disconnect too, you know, disconnect, to be in nature without having to leave, you know. Used to be you could drive up 5 minutes away from your house and not see a soul, but not so much anymore. So I wanted to bring it here, you know.
Because when you drive up the canyon, there's people everywhere.
Oh yeah, you can, yeah.
And so to be able to have this and have the sounds of nature, it's just so important from a mental health and just some place to relax.
Yes. Can't go to nature, just bring it here.